The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. 12 different alien species had gathered here today, but the mood was anything but peaceful. The air hummed with tension, as holographic. Displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and intelligence reports about a small blue planet on the edge of known space. Ambassador Thalron adjusted his ceremonial robes and walked to the center platform. His 4 arms moved with practiced grace as he activated the main display. The image that appeared made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was Earth, spinning slowly in the void, looking harmless and primitive. "Fellow council members," Thalron began, his voice carrying easily through the dome's acoustic systems. 3 years have passed since we first discovered these humans. 3 years of watching, studying, and trying to understand what we are dealing with. Today I bring you disturbing news. Admiral Kresh, the insectoid military commander, clicked his sharp mandibles together. His compound eyes reflected the light from the hologram as he leaned forward. "Get to the point, Ambassador. What makes these primitives worth our time? They barely have fusion power and still use projectile weapons." Thalron touched a control, and the display changed to show a timeline of human expansion. Red dots appeared across multiple star systems, each representing a human colony or outpost. The pattern was clear and alarming. "This is why they matter," Thalron said grimly. "When we first found them, humans occupied 12 worlds. Today, they have spread to over 60 systems. In 3 years, they have expanded faster than any species in recorded galactic history. Counselor Zeph, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline form, pulsed with concern. That expansion rate is impossible. Our models show it should take a primitive species at least 50 years to achieve such spread." "Our models are wrong," Thalron replied. "Humans do not follow our rules. They adapt to hostile environments. That would kill most species. They reproduce rapidly and work together in ways we do not understand. They have turned airless rocks into thriving colonies and made homes in radiation zones that our best scientists avoid." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Admiral Kresh spoke again. "What about their military strength? Surely their primitive weapons pose no real threat." Thalron activated another display showing detailed scans of human ships and weapons. "On the surface, you are correct. Their ships use basic fusion drives. Their weapons fire simple projectiles or low-energy beams. They have no shields worth mentioning, and their armor is primitive metal alloys." "Then what is the problem?" asked General Vorth, the representative of the warrior caste from Rigel Prime. His massive frame dominated his section of the chamber, and his voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "The problem," Thalron said quietly, "is what happened 6 months ago during the border incident." The display changed again, showing the wreckage of 2 ships floating in space. One was clearly a Council scout vessel, its elegant curves and advanced materials unmistakable. The other was a crude human cargo hauler, little more than engines attached to a metal box. Scout Captain Rixtar encountered a human mining station in disputed territory, Thalron continued. Following standard protocol, he demanded their immediate surrender and evacuation. The humans refused. When Captain Rixtar fired a warning shot, the humans responded by ramming their cargo ship directly into his vessel. Admiral Kresh's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "Ramming! That is a suicide tactic. No rational species would sacrifice valuable ships and trained crews in such a wasteful manner." "That is exactly my point," Thalron said. "The humans did not hesitate. They did not negotiate or try to escape. When faced with superior firepower, they chose to destroy both ships rather than surrender. The entire mining station crew evacuated to that cargo hauler and then used it as a weapon. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Every species represented here understood warfare, but the concept of deliberately sacrificing yourself to damage an enemy was foreign to most of them. Wars were fought with strategy, technology, and calculated risks. This human behavior was something else entirely. Counselor Zeph's crystalline form dimmed with worry. If they are willing to die rather than submit, how can we negotiate with them? How do we predict their actions? We cannot, Thalron admitted. Which brings us to today's decision. Our diplomatic missions have failed. We offered them advanced technology, membership in the Council, and protection from hostile species. They refused everything. They insist on maintaining their independence and continuing their expansion. General Vorth stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. Then we stop them now, before they become a real threat. The 4th Pacification Fleet is already prepared. 200 of our finest ships should be more than enough to demonstrate our superiority. Are you certain? Asked Dr. Nexali, the chief scientist from the Centauri Collective. Her multiple tentacles writhed with nervous energy. These humans have shown they do not react predictably. What if they respond with more violence, Admiral? Kresh laughed, a harsh buzzing sound. With what? Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their slow ships cannot outrun our vessels. They have no allies and no advanced technology. This will be over quickly. Thalaron looked around, the chamber at the assembled representatives. Some nodded in agreement, others looked uncertain. The decision would need to be unanimous, as always. Let me be clear about what we are proposing, Thalaron said. We will demand their complete surrender and integration into the Council. If they refuse, we will demonstrate our power by destroying their military forces and orbital installations. Once they see the futility of resistance, they will accept our terms. And if they do not surrender even then? Asked Counselor Zeph. The chamber fell quiet again. No one wanted to say it, but they all knew the answer. If the humans continued to resist after a show of overwhelming force, the Council would have no choice but to eliminate them entirely. It was not something they wanted to do, but a species that could not be reasoned with and expanded so aggressively could not be allowed to continue growing. The vote, Thalron announced. All in favor of authorizing the 4th Pacification Fleet to proceed to the human home system and demand their surrender. One by one, the representatives indicated their agreement. Even those who seemed hesitant understood that something had to be done about the human problem. Within hours, the orders would be transmitted to Admiral Kresh's fleet, currently stationed at the edge of Council space. As the chamber began to empty, Dr. Nexali approached Thalron privately. I have a bad feeling about this, she whispered. These humans are not like other species we have dealt with. They are unpredictable. Thalron nodded grimly. I share your concerns, but what choice do we have? They cannot be allowed to continue, expanding unchecked. Better to deal with them now while they are still weak than to wait until they become a real threat. Neither of them realized just how wrong they were about human weakness. The border incident had taught humanity far more than it had taught the Council, and the humans had been very busy in the months since that first violent encounter. The Council was about to learn what happened when you underestimated a species that valued freedom above everything else. The emergency alert pierced through the quiet morning atmosphere of the Global Defense Headquarters in Geneva. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was reviewing mining reports from the outer colonies when her computer screen flashed red and began displaying incoming data from the deep space monitoring stations. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers as she read the first line of the report. Massive fleet approaching. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. Configuration matches Galactic Council vessels. Within minutes, the building buzzed with activity as staff members rushed between offices, carrying data tablets and speaking in urgent whispers. The elevator was packed as Sarah rode up to the executive levels, where President David Torres was, already meeting with his top advisors. The Situation Room had been transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed the solar system with hundreds of small dots representing human ships, stations, and colonies. At the edge of the display, a much larger cluster of red dots marked the approaching alien fleet. "How many ships are they bringing?" Torres asked as Sarah entered the room. General Patricia Hayes looked up from her tactical display. "Long-range sensors show at least 200 vessels. Their energy signatures are massive compared to our ships. Each of their cruisers puts out more power than our entire lunar defense grid." Dr. Robert Kim, head of the Emergency Technology Initiative, was frantically typing on multiple keyboards at once. "Sir, I've been analyzing the data we collected from the border incident. The wreckage from that Council scout ship gave us incredible intelligence." Torres leaned over Kim's shoulder to look at the screen. "What kind of intelligence?" "Their shields operate on a specific frequency pattern. It cycles every few seconds, probably to prevent exactly what we're about to do. But the pattern is predictable. We can tune our weapons to match the frequency gaps." "What about their hull materials?" asked Hayes. Kim switched to another screen showing molecular analysis. "Interesting stuff. Much stronger than our best alloys, but they have a weakness. High-frequency vibrations cause structural failure in their hull composition. The miners on Station 7 actually discovered this by accident when they were using ultrasonic cutters on the wreckage." Torres studied the data for a moment. "So we can potentially hurt them. But what about numbers? 200 ships against how many of ours?" Hayes pulled up the fleet status report. "All available military vessels are converging on Earth. We have 43 proper warships, including the carrier Defiance and the battleship Washington. But we've also converted every civilian ship we can get our hands on." The display showed an impressive list. Cargo haulers had been fitted with missile pods. Passenger liners were now troop transports. Even luxury yachts had been armed with whatever. Weapons could be mounted on their hulls. "Total count is about 300 ships," Hayes continued. "Not all of them are really combat-ready, but they can fight if needed." Torres frowned. 300 against 200. That's not the overwhelming advantage I was hoping for, especially when their ships are so much more advanced than ours. Dr. Kim cleared his throat. "Sir, there's something else you need to know. The quantum communication network has been buzzing with activity since the alert went out." Torres raised an eyebrow. "What kind of activity?" "Every colony, every mining station, every research outpost has been checking in, and they're all asking the same question. When do we fight?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah found her voice first. "You mean they want to join the battle? From across dozens of light years?" Kim nodded. "The quantum communication system connects all human settlements instantly. Word of the alien ultimatum spread to every colony within hours. They're all demanding to know how they can help defend Earth." Torres walked over to the main display and stared at the red dots, representing the approaching fleet. "What exactly are they offering?" "Ships, sir. Lots of ships. The mining colonies have been building heavy haulers and industrial vessels for years. The research stations have experimental craft. Even the agricultural worlds have transport ships." Hayes pulled up another screen showing messages from the colonies. "New Shanghai is offering 12 heavy mining ships. Kepler Station can spare 30 cargo vessels. The Vega Research Institute has some kind of experimental fleet they've been working on." "How experimental?" Torres asked. Dr. Kim grinned for the first time all day. "Very experimental. They've been testing new engine designs, new weapon concepts, new ship configurations. Turns out our scientists have been busy while we weren't looking." Sarah studied the colony reports flowing across the screens. "This is incredible. How many ships are we talking about total?" "Still counting," Kim replied. "But early estimates suggest we might have access to over 1,000 vessels if every colony contributes what they're offering." The mood in the room began to shift from despair to something resembling hope. Torres looked around at his advisors. "Can they get here in time?" "The aliens arrive in less than 3 days." "Most of them, yes," Hayes confirmed. "The colonies have been using the same quantum tunneling technology for ship travel as for communications. They can reach Earth almost as fast as a message can be sent. Torres made his decision. Send word to every human settlement. Tell them we accept their offer. Earth is calling in every favor, every ship, every weapon we can get our hands on. Kim was already typing commands. What should we tell them about the battle plan? The truth, Torres replied. We're outnumbered by a technologically superior enemy who demands our surrender, but we're not going to give up without a fight. If they want to destroy human independence, they'll have to go through every last one of us. The next several hours were a whirlwind of activity. Ships began arriving from the outer colonies in small groups, their crews eager to join the defense of Earth. Each vessel brought its own story of hasty preparation and determined volunteers. The mining ship Prosperity arrived from the asteroid belt carrying enough tungsten rods to supply the entire fleet with kinetic ammunition. The research. Vessel Discovery brought experimental energy weapons that had never been tested in combat. Even the passenger liner Star Dreams had been converted into a mobile medical facility. Sarah found herself assigned to coordinate the arriving forces. Each ship's captain checked in with her personally, and she was amazed by their determination. These were miners, scientists, farmers, and traders who had dropped everything to defend their home world. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Foster from the communications station, "I'm getting reports of ships arriving faster than we expected. The Tau Ceti colony sent 40 vessels instead of the 20 they promised." Sarah looked at the tactical display and gasped. The number of friendly contacts around Earth had doubled in just 12 hours. Ships were still arriving every few minutes, and more were reporting they were on the way. Dr. Kim appeared at her shoulder, looking exhausted but excited. "Sarah, you need to see this. The quantum communication array is picking up something interesting." Led her to his workstation, where lines of data scrolled across multiple screens. "These are construction reports from the colonies. They didn't just send us the ships they already had. They've been building new ones." Building new ones? How is that possible? Apparently, when word got out about the alien threat, every human settlement with industrial capacity started working around the clock. They've been stripping mining equipment to build weapons, converting civilian ships to military specs, even building entirely new vessels from scratch. Sarah stared at the numbers flowing across the screen. "This says the Centauri Collective built 60 new ships in 2 days. That's impossible." Kim shrugged. "Impossible or not, they're on their way here. And they're not the only ones. It looks like every human colony has been preparing for this fight for months, ever since the border incident." The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. They've been planning this. All of them. Every colony, every settlement, every mining station. They knew this day would come. "And they've been getting ready," Kim confirmed. "The aliens think they're dealing with one primitive world. They have no idea they're about to face the entire human species." Torres joined them at the workstation, looking both amazed and worried. "How many ships are we expecting total?" Kim checked his latest calculations. "Current count shows over 3,000 vessels either here or en route, and that number keeps growing." The president of Earth looked out at the tactical display showing hundreds of ships in formation around their home world, with more arriving constantly. For the first time since the alien ultimatum, he allowed himself to smile. "Gentlemen, ladies," he announced to the room, "it looks like humanity is about to send the Galactic Council a message they'll never forget." The edge of space rippled like water as the first council ships emerged from hyperspace. One by one, 200 vessels materialized in perfect formation at the outer boundary of the Sol system. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Kresh stood in the command center of his flagship, the Dominance, watching his fleet take position with satisfaction. The massive dreadnought was 3 times longer than the largest human vessel and packed with enough firepower to level a city. Around him, his officers worked with efficient precision, their insectoid features reflecting the glow of control panels and tactical displays. "Sensor sweep complete, Admiral," reported his tactical officer. "The system contains one inhabited world with several colonies on nearby moons and asteroids. We're detecting multiple orbital installations and what appears to be a small defensive fleet." Crash's compound eyes focused on the main display, showing the human ships clustered around Earth. "How many vessels are they fielding?" "Approximately 50 ships in defensive formation. Energy signatures are consistent with fusion power plants and basic projectile weapons. No energy shields detected." A clicking sound filled the command center as Crash's mandibles moved in amusement. 50 ships? Our intelligence suggested they had colonized dozens of worlds. Where are their reinforcements? Unknown, sir. Perhaps this is the extent of their military capability. Crash studied the tactical display more carefully. The human ships were arranged in a loose formation around their home world, looking small and fragile compared to his battle fleet. Their largest vessel barely registered as a threat on his sensors. "Open a communication channel to the human fleet," he ordered. "Let us see if we can end this without unnecessary violence." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the human carrier Defiance, Admiral Rebecca Stone watched the alien fleet with carefully controlled calm. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring sensors and maintaining communications with the other human ships. "They're taking their time," observed Captain Walsh, her tactical officer. "Probably trying to intimidate us with their formation." Stone nodded. "Standard procedure for a technologically superior force. They want us to see how outgunned we are and surrender without a fight." Lieutenant Commander Harris looked up from his communication station. "Admiral, we're receiving signals from all outer colonies. Everyone reports ready status." "And the special packages?" "Deployed and standing by, ma'am. The aliens won't detect them until it's too late." Stone allowed herself a small smile. The Council had superior technology and firepower, but they were operating from incomplete information. The border incident. 6 months ago, had taught humanity valuable lessons about their enemies, but it had also taught them something even more important about themselves. "Ma'am," called out Ensign Torres from the sensor station, "the alien flagship is powering up its communication array." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kresh in all his intimidating glory. His insectoid features were alien and frightening, but his words were transmitted through universal translators that made his message clear. "Primitive humans," Kresh began, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who had never faced defeat. "You stand before the 4th Pacification Fleet of the Galactic Council. Your weapons are obsolete, your ships are inferior, and your position is hopeless. Surrender now and accept integration into our collective. Continued resistance will only result in unnecessary destruction." Stone stepped forward to respond, her expression calm and professional. "This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the United Earth Space Navy. Your demand for surrender is denied. This is human space, and we will defend it." Crash's compound eyes glittered, with what might have been anger. "You would sacrifice your lives for the illusion of independence. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. This battle has only one possible outcome." "Then I guess we'll have to agree to disagree," Stone replied. "If you want our system, you'll have to take it." The communication cut off, leaving both fleets facing each other across the void. The tension was palpable as weapons powered up and shields strengthened. In the space between the two forces, automated sensors recorded every energy signature and tactical movement. On the Dominance, Admiral Kresh turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the advance. Target their military vessels first. Once we destroy their capacity to resist, they will see reason." The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive ships casting shadows across space as they approached the inner system. Their shields shimmered with protective energy, and their weapon ports glowed with barely contained power. Stone watched them come with apparent calm, but her mind was racing through the final preparations. Everything depended on timing and coordination. Too early, and the plan would fail. Too late, and Earth would be defenseless. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Execute defensive pattern Alpha. Make them work for every mile." The human fleet responded by spreading into a wider formation, each ship taking position to maximize their defensive capabilities. To the aliens, it looked like a desperate attempt to avoid being overwhelmed by superior numbers. The first shots of the battle came as expected. The human ships launched missiles and projectile rounds that impacted harmlessly against Council shields. The aliens responded with devastating energy beams that tore through human vessels like paper. Within minutes, several human ships had been destroyed or disabled. The remainder began falling back toward Earth, apparently in full retreat. To Admiral Kresh, it confirmed everything he had expected about human capabilities. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Target their orbital installations. Once we demonstrate our power, they will surrender." But as his fleet pressed deeper into the system, something began happening that he had not anticipated. Space itself seemed to shimmer around his ships, and new contacts started appearing on his sensors. At first, it was just a few dozen ships materializing from what appeared to be empty space. Then hundreds more appeared from different vectors. Within minutes, contacts were appearing faster than his sensors could track them. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out with growing alarm, "we have multiple contacts emerging throughout the system. They're coming from everywhere." Kresh stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The space around his fleet was filling with ships faster than seemed possible. They came from behind asteroids, from the shadow of moons, from coordinates that his sensors had shown as empty just moments before. "How many?" he demanded. "Sensors are showing over 1,000 contacts, and the number is still rising, sir." The truth began to dawn on the Council commander. The small human fleet that had retreated had not been running away. They had been drawing his forces into a carefully prepared trap. The empty space around them had been an illusion, filled with human ships using some kind of stealth technology. Admiral Stone's voice crackled across all communication frequencies. "Council fleet, this is Admiral Stone. You wanted to see humanity's response to your ultimatum? This is it. Every human colony, every mining station, every research outpost, every settlement in 50 systems has sent ships to defend our home. You're not facing one world's navy. You're facing the entire human species." Kresh watched in growing horror as his sensors continued to register new contacts. Ships bearing the markings of colonies dozens of light years away, mining corporations, research institutes, and even converted passenger vessels formed an ever-tightening sphere around his fleet. The human vessels were crude compared to Council technology, but there were thousands of them. Mining ships had been converted into mobile missile platforms. Cargo haulers mounted massive kinetic weapons. Even luxury yachts had been armed with whatever weapons their crews could install. "Sir," his aide whispered, "what are your orders?" Admiral Kresh stared at the tactical display showing his 200 ships completely surrounded by what appeared to be the largest space fleet ever assembled. The humans had not just prepared for war, they had mobilized their entire civilization. 4. The first time in his military career, the Admiral found himself facing an enemy that outnumbered his forces by more than 10 to 1. The primitive weapons might not be individually threatening, but in such overwhelming numbers, they represented a force that could destroy his entire fleet. The communication channel crackled to life again. "Council fleet, this is Admiral Stone. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of our system. This is your only warning." Kresh looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had come here expecting to face a handful of primitive ships. Instead, they found themselves trapped in the middle of the largest military gathering in galactic history. The 30 seconds began counting down, and with each passing moment, it became clear that the Galactic Council had severely underestimated exactly what they were dealing with when they threatened humanity. The moment hung frozen in space like a photograph. 3,000 human ships surrounded the trapped Council fleet in perfect formation, their weapons aimed at the alien vessels from every possible angle. Admiral Kresh felt sweat forming on his carapace despite the controlled atmosphere of his flagship. 30 seconds! Admiral Stone's voice echoed across all communication channels. The countdown had begun, and every being in the system could feel the weight of the decision that was about to be made. On the mining ship Prosperity, Captain Davis gripped his command chair as his crew of former asteroid miners prepared their improvised weapons. These men and women had spent years breaking apart rocks in deep space, but today they were ready to break apart something much more dangerous. "All stations report ready," his first officer announced. Around them, the ship's hull vibrated with the power of industrial drilling equipment that had been converted into weapons. The mining lasers that once carved through solid rock were now aimed at alien warships. Aboard the research vessel Discovery, Dr. Rachel Park watched her experimental energy weapons charged to full power. Her team had been working on theoretical weapon designs for years, but they had never imagined their first test would be against an alien invasion fleet. "Energy levels are stable," reported her assistant. "The quantum disruption field is ready for deployment." Even the converted passenger liner Stardreams had joined the fight. Captain Miller looked around at his mixed crew of civilians and volunteers, all of whom had insisted on contributing to Earth's defense. In the passenger compartments where families once enjoyed luxury cruises, medical teams were now prepared to treat wounded from across the human fleet. "Communications from all sectors confirm ready status," his operations officer reported. "Every ship in the fleet is prepared to engage." Admiral Kresh studied his tactical display with growing desperation. The numbers were overwhelming. His 200 ships faced an enemy force that outnumbered them 15-1. Even with superior technology and firepower, the mathematics of the situation were undeniable. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "perhaps we should consider negotiation. These humans are clearly more organized than our intelligence suggested." Kresh's mandibles clicked with frustration. "We cannot show weakness to a primitive species. The Council's reputation depends on our success here." 20 seconds, Admiral Stone announced. The alien admiral made his decision. "All ships, prepare to engage. Target the largest human vessels first. If we can break their formation, we might still achieve victory." His fleet responded immediately. Energy weapons began charging to full power, and targeting systems locked onto the human ships. The Council vessels had enough firepower to destroy hundreds of human ships in the first few minutes of battle. But as Kresh gave the order to fire, something unexpected happened. The space around his fleet began to shimmer with strange energy patterns. Every human ship was broadcasting the same frequency, creating a coordinated field that surrounded the alien vessels. "What is that?" Kresh demanded. His chief engineer frantically worked at his controls. "Some kind of harmonic interference pattern. It's affecting our shield generators." Dr. Kim's months of research had paid off perfectly. The harmonic resonators installed on every human ship were broadcasting the exact frequency needed to disrupt Council shield technology. The aliens' most advanced defense systems began flickering and failing throughout their fleet. "Shields are down across all vessels," the engineer reported in panic. "The resonance is causing cascade failures in our defensive grid." 10 seconds, Stone announced coldly. Admiral Kresh watched in horror as his fleet's protective shields collapsed one by one. Without their energy barriers, the Council ships were vulnerable to even the most primitive human weapons. His technological advantage had just disappeared. 5 seconds. Kresh looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all looking to him for orders, but he could see the fear in their eyes. For the first time in their military careers, they were facing an enemy that had outmaneuvered them tactically. "Time's up," Admiral Stone announced. The space around the Council fleet erupted in light as thousands of human weapons fired simultaneously. mining lasers, converted industrial equipment, improvised missile launchers, and experimental energy. Weapons all discharged at once, creating a spectacular display of coordinated firepower. The attack came from every direction at once. Tungsten rods launched from mining ships struck alien hulls with tremendous force. Energy beams from research. Vessels carved through armor plating. Even simple projectile weapons from converted civilian ships found their targets. Admiral Kresh felt his flagship shake under the impact of dozens of hits. "Return fire!" he shouted over the sound of alarms and explosions. "All ships engage!" The Council vessels responded with their superior weapons, sending devastating energy, blasts toward the human fleet. Each alien shot could destroy or disable a human ship, and their targeting systems were far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. The cargo hauler New Frontier exploded in a brilliant flash as a Council plasma beam struck its converted engine section. The mining vessel Iron Will took a direct hit that severed its forward section, but its crew continued firing their drilling lasers even as their ship broke apart. But for every human ship destroyed, 10 more continued their attack. The converted passenger liner Golden Star used its luxury shuttle bays to launch swarms of improvised fighters. The research ship Explorer deployed experimental drone weapons that swarmed around alien vessels like angry insects. "We're losing ships faster than we can count," Captain Walsh reported to Admiral Stone. "But their formation is breaking up. The aliens can't maintain coordinated fire under this much pressure." Stone nodded grimly. The human strategy was working, but the cost was terrible. Hundreds of brave crews were dying to prove that Earth would not surrender without a fight. On the alien flagship, Admiral Kresh watched his fleet being torn apart by sheer weight of numbers. His tactical display showed Council ships throughout the formation, reporting critical damage and system failures. "Sir," his aide called out desperately, 17 ships have lost primary power. The cruiser Dominion is requesting permission to withdraw." Kresh realized that his fleet was facing something unprecedented in galactic military history. This was not a conventional battle between organized armies. This was an entire civilization fighting for its survival, using every resource and every life to defend their freedom. The primitive human weapons were individually weak, but in such overwhelming numbers, they were devastating. Mining equipment designed to break apart asteroids proved surprisingly effective against alien hull materials. Industrial lasers meant, for construction work, cut through Council armor like it was paper. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from multiple ships. They're requesting immediate withdrawal from the battle zone." Kresh looked at his tactical display one final time. His proud fleet was scattered and broken, surrounded by thousands of human ships that showed no sign of stopping their attack. The battle he had expected to win in minutes had turned into a nightmare of overwhelming enemy numbers and unexpected tactics. The admiral of the 4th Pacification Fleet faced the most difficult decision of his military career. He could continue fighting and watch his entire fleet be destroyed, or he could admit defeat to a species the Council had dismissed as primitive and harmless. Around him, the bridge crew waited for his orders as the human fleet continued its relentless attack. The tide of battle had turned completely, and there was no hope of victory against such overwhelming odds. The emergency communication channel crackled with static as Admiral Kresh's voice filled the silence of space. His words carried across thousands of human ships, each crew waiting to hear whether the battle would continue or end. "Human Admiral Stone," Kresh began, his tone heavy with defeat. "This is Admiral Kresh of the 4th Pacification Fleet. We acknowledge your superior position and request terms for withdrawal from your system." The announcement sent waves of celebration throughout the human fleet. On mining ships and cargo haulers, crews cheered and embraced each other. On converted passenger liners, families who had volunteered to fight hugged their children. Even on military vessels, discipline gave way momentarily to joy and relief. Admiral Stone remained composed despite the magnitude of the moment. "Admiral Kresh, your surrender is accepted." You will power down all weapons systems immediately and prepare for escort to the edge of our system. Any attempt to reactivate weapons or deviate from your assigned course will be considered an act of hostility. Across the battlefield, the massive council ships began shutting down their weapon systems. The energy signatures that had made them so threatening gradually faded as their crews complied with the surrender terms. It was a humiliating moment for the aliens who had come expecting an easy victory. On Earth, President Torres watched the events unfold from the Global Defense Headquarters. The main display showed thousands of green dots surrounding the much smaller cluster of red alien ships. It was a sight that would be remembered in human history books for generations to come. "Mr. President," called Dr. Kim from his workstation, "we're receiving reports from all sectors. The alien fleet is complying with surrender terms. They're powering down weapons and engines." Torres nodded, but his expression remained serious. "What about casualties? How many ships did we lose?" General Hayes checked her reports. "Final count shows 437 human vessels destroyed or severely damaged. Crew casualties are estimated at around 8,000 dead and 15,000 wounded." The celebration in the room quieted as the cost of victory became clear. Each number represented families who had lost loved ones, communities that had sacrificed their people for the cause of freedom. The victory was sweet, but it had not come without a price. "They died heroes," Torres said quietly. "Make sure their families know that, and make sure the galaxy knows that humanity remembers its fallen." Meanwhile, in space, the process of escorting the alien fleet out of the system began. Human ships formed protective corridors around the Council vessels, ensuring they maintained course toward the edge of the solar system. It was a strange sight, primitive human ships herding advanced alien warships like sheep. Admiral Kresh stood on his damaged bridge, watching human vessels move into escort positions around his fleet. His tactical officer approached with a data tablet containing preliminary analysis of the human forces. "Admiral, you need to see this," the officer said. "Our sensors have been analyzing the human fleet composition. The results are remarkable." Kresh took the tablet and studied the information. The human fleet was even more impressive than he had initially realized. Ships had arrived from over 60 different star systems, representing colonies and settlements that spanned hundreds of light years. "Look at these construction dates," his officer continued. "Many of these vessels were built within the last 6 months. The humans have been preparing for this confrontation since the border incident." The Admiral's compound eyes widened as the implications became clear. "They used our attack on their mining station as a rallying cry. The destruction of one cargo ship motivated their entire species to prepare for war. It gets worse, sir. Intelligence analysis suggests that every major human settlement contributed resources to this effort. They stripped their own defenses to protect their home world. This fleet represents the combined military might of their entire civilization." Kresh set down the tablet and looked out at the human ships surrounding his fleet. Each vessel told a story of sacrifice and determination. Mining colonies had sent their only ships, leaving themselves defenseless. Research stations had contributed, experimental vessels that had never been tested in combat. Even civilian populations had volunteered to crew converted passenger ships. The communication system activated again, and Admiral Stone's voice filled the council ships. "Admiral Kresh, this is Admiral Stone. Before you leave our system, there is something you need to understand." "I am listening," Kresh replied. "This fleet you see around you represents every human settlement in known space. Farmers, miners, scientists, traders, even children helped build these ships. When you threatened our freedom, you united our entire species in a way that has never happened before." Stone paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "We did not want this fight. We offered to share space peacefully with your council. But when you demanded our surrender, you left us no choice but to show you what humanity is capable of when we stand together. The alien admiral listened in silence, beginning to understand the magnitude of his miscalculation. The council had assumed they were dealing with a primitive world defended by a small military force. Instead, they had encountered an entire civilization willing to sacrifice everything for their independence. "Your message will be delivered to the Galactic Council," Kresh replied. "I suspect they will find it most instructive." As the council fleet reached the edge of the solar system, the human escort ships began turning back toward Earth. The alien vessels continued their journey into deep space, carrying news that would change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Stone watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly to coordinate the massive human fleet as it began dispersing back to colonies throughout human space. "Admiral," called out Captain Walsh, "we're receiving final reports from all sectors. The alien fleet has departed human space. Mission accomplished." Stone nodded, but her thoughts were already turning to the future. The victory over the Council fleet was just the beginning. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage in a way that could never be ignored or forgotten. Dr. Kim's voice came over the communication system from Earth. "All ships, this is Dr. Robert Kim from Global Defense Command. On behalf of President Torres and all of Earth, thank you. You have shown the galaxy that humanity will never bow to tyranny. You have proven that when we stand together, no force in the universe can break our spirit." The human fleet began its journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. A primitive species had faced down the might of an advanced alien empire and won without firing a single shot in the final confrontation. The aliens had come expecting to find a weak and divided species ready to surrender to superior force. Instead, they discovered a united humanity that valued freedom above life itself. The Battle of Sol would be remembered not just as a military victory, but as the moment when humanity claimed its place among the stars as a force that could never be conquered or controlled. As the last human ships returned to their home ports, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The species that had once seemed primitive and insignificant had revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous. A people who would sacrifice everything to remain free.